Tournament, Coach Tom Osborne.
Well, I certainly want to thank all of you for coming. It's just a night that I've been looking forward to more than some other nights, because it's with folks I know, care about, worked with, and so everybody here is kind of part of the deal. And so I can't thank you enough. I want to thank Trev for being the MC tonight, and he's done a great job up at UNO, and we appreciate him very much. Appreciate Sean and Kristen being here tonight, and Sean will do a great job. I hope you get to know him. He'll certainly carry the athletic department forward in an exemplary way, and so things will go very well. Tony Davis, a lot of you know Tony, called and said he couldn't be here, and that triggered a memory. I had a lot of memories of Tony, and things had always sometimes been a little tense between us, and so I thought, well, at the end of his first year at IBAC, I thought, well, I'll kind of get to know him a little better, and so I asked him if he wanted to go hunting, and he said, yeah, I did, and so I said, okay. So we went to this place not far from Lincoln, and I said, you wait in the car and I'll go up and get permission from the farmer. I kind of know the guy. So I went up and I asked the guy if it'd be okay if we hunted there. He said, yeah. He said, it'd be fine. But he said, while you're here, I wonder if you'd do me a favor. And I said, yeah, okay. He said, you see that old mule standing over there in the farmyard? And I said, yeah. He said, well, that mule's 30 years old. And he's blind and he's got all kinds of internal problems, and the veterinary says he needs to be put away, but he said, I've grown so close to that mule, I can't bring myself to do it. So while you're here, would you do it for me? I said, well, yeah, I will. And so I started back to the car, and I got thinking about Tony and some of the issues he'd caused me. And so I got there, and I said, Tony, the guy said no. He said, he said, I was a lousy coach. And when he found out you were with me, he said that you were the worst IBAC he'd ever seen in Nebraska. I said, well, I'm not going to let him get away with this. I said, you see that old mule standing over there in the farmyard? And Tony says, yeah. I said, well, you watch this. So I rolled the window down, reached in the back seat, got my gun, and pow, I dropped the mule one shot. Just then I heard bang, bang, bang. Tony turned to me, he says, let's get out of here, Coach. I got 3 cows. And so that's Tony, right? And so as you know, I'm supposed to be retired now. And last week I really got feeling lousy. And so I talked to Nancy, and I told her I was feeling bad, and she said, well, let's go to the doctor. I don't like to go to the doctor, but we did. So the guy checked me over, and after he had looked me over, he said, why don't you go out in the waiting room, and I'll have a little talk with Nancy. So he said, Nancy, he said, this pretty serious, could be fatal, but this happens to a lot of people when they retire. They kind of feel like they don't have any purpose, and so he said, you can work your way out of this. And the first thing he said, don't give him a big list of things to do, like cleaning the garage and taking out the garbage and doing the lawn and all that kind of stuff. He said, what you need to do is just do whatever he wants to do. You need to really kind of pamper him for a while. So if he wants to go fishing, you go fishing with him. Drive the boat. And if he needs to get some fish cleaned. Will you help him clean the fish? If he wants to go turkey hunting, just go sit in the blind with him. Help him clean the turkey, and he'll probably be okay. So on the way home, I got thinking about it, and I turned to her and I said, Nancy, what the doctor said? She said, well, I got bad news. He said you're going to die. And so Charlie alluded to retirement. Said this ain't for sissies. But I really appreciate Milt's comments and Charlie and the coaches and all you guys. And you can tell from looking at the film that this didn't take a coaching genius. We had some really good players, and we had some really good coaches, and we had great chemistry. And when you have that going for you, you know, it's kind of on autopilot, and that's kind of the way it was. One more story, and just by way of telling you, the coaching is kind of difficult, and sometimes you had to be pretty quick on your feet. And this goes back quite a few years. Probably the one bowl game that nobody here can remember, back in 76, 77, something like that. We played down the Liberty Bowl, and we were playing North Carolina. We weren't playing very well. Matter of fact, we were trailing 17-14. It was in the fourth quarter, about 3 minutes left. North Carolina had the ball. It looked pretty hopeless. And all of a sudden they fumbled, and we recovered. And so Randy Garcia was playing quarterback that night. He came running over me on the sideline. He said, Coach, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. Randy said, we've tried everything. Nothing's working. What do you want to do? And he said, well, he couldn't think of anything either. And our trainer, Paul Snyder, at that time, you know, George worked with Paul for many years. And of course, Paul was never one that was shy about giving his opinion. And he became kind of worried that we weren't going to do anything. So he spoke up and he said, well, why don't you run 8 to the right and 7 to the left? And I said, well, that sounds as good as anything, Randy. So you go ahead and run 8 to the right, 7 to the left. So he went out there, we went 8 to the right, went about 12 yards, 7 to the left, about another 10. 8 to the right, another good gain, 7 to the left, another good gain. Went right down the field, you know, 8, 9, 10 yards of crack. Looked better than we had all night. Got a first down at the 5-yard line. Went 8 to the right. Defensive end broke through, lost 2 yards. 7 to the left, defensive end broke through, we lost 2 more yards. 8 to the right, lose another yard. So now it's 4th and 10 at the 10, and we're almost out of time. And some of you have done some coaching. You realize what happened then. Randy began to look at me over on the sideline, and I pretended I didn't see him. I started looking up in the stands. And so pretty soon he called play, and the team came out of the huddle, and I was kind of interested in what was going to happen, so I started watching again. And I could have sworn that he gave the ball to I am hip. And Isaiah ran in the middle line, about 10 guys from North Carolina hit him, and I figured, well, the game's over, you know, 4th down, no time. Then I saw that Randy had made the greatest fake I'd ever seen. He'd hidden the ball in his hip, and he raised up, threw the ball to Tim Smith, split in, standing all by himself in the end zone. And so last play of the game, we win 21-17. So I went in the locker room, met with the press, and a lot of you have done some coaching and realized what I did at that point. I took full credit for the victory. And but after the press and everybody kind of filed out, I saw Randy stand over the corner. He was the last guy in a room. I called him over. I said, Randy, I said, how in the world did you come up with that play? Because that was a play we had in the playbook, and then hadn't worked early in the season. We dropped it. We hadn't practiced it for 3 months. I'd forgotten about it. He said, well, it wasn't that hard, Coach. He said, you know, we're running 8 to the right, 7 to the left. I said, yeah, I know that. He said, I got down the goal line, didn't seem to be working. I said, I noticed that too. I said, I didn't know what to do, so I got in the huddle, and I added 8 and 7 together. He said, I came up with play number 14, and that's what I called. And I said, no, Randy, I said, you think a minute. I said, 8 and 7 and 14 is 15. And he thought a little bit, and he says, you know, Coach, he said, if I was as smart as you are, we'd lost the ball game tonight. And So anyway, that, that's kind of the story of my coaching. But anyway, just a couple things on a more serious note. Trev kind of alluded to it earlier. He was talking about 42 years. But you know, we've had 50 years of sellouts here. And people talk a lot about that, and from 62 through 2012. And but the thing they don't talk about much, and a lot of people don't even realize, maybe you don't realize, is that during that 50-year period, Nebraska won more games than any Division I program. So during that period of time, we've won 490 games, almost 10 a year, and Oklahoma is second at 450. It's quite a stretch of 40. And then it's Ohio State at 437, Texas 436, Alabama 435. And maybe the best indicator of all is percentage, and we won 79%. Ohio State 76%, OU 75, Alabama 73, Texas 73, and on down Michigan, USC, Florida State, Georgia. And it's kind of interesting because if you think about it, all of those states are certainly more populous. There's a lot more players, and in most cases their weather is better. And so inherently they have some recruiting advantages, some pretty significant ones. And so I thought about that, and sometimes I puzzle about it a little bit, because over that period of time of 50 years, that kind of difference is statistically pretty significant. And so I thought I'd just run through some things that I thought made a difference over that period of time. And the first thing I would like to do is mention Bob Devaney. A few of you guys here played for Bob. I see Guy here, I know Johnny's here, and some other guys that played for Bob, maybe Steve Manstead and so on. And so things changed when he came. I happened to arrive the same spring that Bob did. Matter of fact, he was still at Wyoming when I got here, and I wrote him a letter at Wyoming. And when he came, he brought a staff that was intact, and they knew what they were doing. And so John Melton came, and Carl Selmer came, and Mike Corrigan, and Jim Ross, and Bob. And then he kept Cleet Fisher, and he kept George Kelly. And that was the staff. And the thing a lot of people don't realize is there were really good players here. I don't know why, but they were good. And the whole backfield went to the NFL. We had Kent McLuhan, we had Bobby Hahn, we had Bill Thornton, and we had Danny Claridge. And they all went to NFL. Bob Brown played 10, 15 years NFL. And, of course, Lloyd Voss, and on and on. And but those guys had only won 3 games the year before. And all of a sudden, they won 9. They went 9-2. And then they won 10, and then things took off. So I think that all of us here owe a real debt of gratitude to those guys, because they kind of started the thing. And then you guys picked it up and carried it forward from that point on. So the tradition was good. And one thing that Bob and his staff brought was the idea of mental toughness. And I think that has carried through, has been pretty much a continuous thread through the whole thing. We didn't take shortcuts. We didn't do it the easy way. We did it the hard way. And I think that philosophy stayed with us, and you all understand what that meant. The other thing that Bob brought was a positive attitude. Every game he went into, he thought he was going to win it. And I think that was something that had been missing before. And so he really made a huge difference in this program. The second thing, beyond tradition, that I think has been pretty much a thread that has been common to all of you and all the teams that you represent, is a great work ethic. We probably most of the time outworked people. If we didn't out-talent them, we outworked them. And I think over time, that always pays off. I think there was a fairly significant amount of innovation here. As you know, Boyd Epley was the first, I believe, full-time strength coach. And that was something that came after 2 6 and 4 seasons, where Bob was pretty receptive to new ideas. And so I took Boyd in there, and I said, Bob, this guy says he can make us better, and Bob was willing to listen. And Boyd did his part. And we started an off-season program and a conditioning and a strength program that really led to some very good things. I think we did a better job at developing people than most anybody around the country, and that was very, very meaningful. And of course, nutrition. Dave Ellis is here, probably the first full-time nutrition guy in the country, and that's been very powerful, very meaningful. And of course, now we're doing the research center over in the East Stadium. So we've tried to stay a little bit ahead of the curve, and I think most years we've been able to do that, and so there have been a lot of factors there. You all know about the fan support, and that's been pretty unique, and that's been important. And then the support system we've had here, Ursula Walsh, and then we had Roger Gruters, and now we got Dennis, and of course life skills, and those things are all, I think, top notch. They're as good as there are. Athletic medicine, been tremendous. Sam Fenning, and then of course George, even Doak, and the thing about Doak was, I had knee surgery, and you know how your knee is supposed to bend. Well, Doak thought it bent the other way, and so I learned very quickly to stay away from Doak. But anyway, we've had great support staff, and a lot of staff members are here from the athletic department. And I think we do everything really pretty well, whether it be Husker Athletic Fund, whether it be the business office, marketing, you name it. It's done very well. Just 2 or 3 more things, and I won't bore you anymore. I think something that's been very important is integrity, because if you think about that earlier list that I read of names, almost every one of them has had a major bump in the road in terms of sanctions. And we've gone 50 years in the sport of football without any major sanctions here. And when you get hit with that, where they take away games and they take away scholarships, and it's about an 8 to 10 year deal, pulling yourself out of it. And so that's been a big deal. Everybody knows about the walk-ons, and some of you guys were walk-ons, and I can't thank you enough, because you not only gave us depth, you not only gave us some really special players, but you gave us an attitude. You know, when a scholarship player came in here, he realized if he didn't work really hard, and if he wasn't willing to pay a great price, some walk-on guy's going to take his place. And so the whole thing, the attitude of the walk-ons began to permeate the whole program. And I think that was a huge factor as far as we were concerned. And then I would also just mention the coaches and the continuity. You know, the fact that Charlie stuck around as long as he did, Milt stuck around, Ron Brown was with me a long time, Frank Solich, and all those guys. The average Division I coach stays in one place about 3 years. And on average, you would lose then 3 coaches a year if you're a typical program. We lost about 1 coach every 3 or 4 years. And so the fact that we were together so long, knew each other so well, even though we weren't always the smartest guys in the world, if we saw something out there on the field, all of a sudden that first series, it was entirely different than what we had practiced against. We could think about, well, what we did 4 years ago when we saw it, or 5 years ago, and as a result, we could adjust pretty quickly. And so these guys and their loyalty was really huge, because they could have gone other places for more money, and they stayed here, and that was really important. Last thing I'll mention to you, and Charlie alluded to it, I don't remember ever telling him about that, but many years ago, matter of fact 3,000 years ago, the Greeks talked about balance, and they talked about the fact that a truly educated person is one who has balance in his or her life. And they said there are really three dimensions of human experience. There's the physical dimension, and there's the intellectual dimension, and then there's the spiritual dimension. And if somebody has grown and developed in all three areas, then you're truly an educated person. And I've kind of liked that idea. And so if you think about it, so many of you guys, when you're playing here, the dream that you were pursuing was NFL. And a lot of you did it, and a lot of you did it well, some of you didn't do it. But what the NFL represented was the epitome. And so if you watch advertising, the American dream is to have money, and you have money. Secondly is to have celebrity, you have celebrity. Thirdly is to have talent, and you have talent. And then fourth, something I don't have anymore, a lot of you still have, and that's youth. And so if you got those four things, you kind of got the world right where you want it. But as all of you know, sometimes guys coming back out of the NFL aren't necessarily on top of the world. And so I began to think about that and realized that sometimes they were one-dimensional. They knew how to block, they knew how to tackle. But when the blocking and the tackling was over, there wasn't anything that gave them any significance. And a lot of them had educations, most of them had degrees, and that would be good. So you had the intellectual dimension. And say, well, those guys would be great. But if your whole identity, and you guys understand this, your whole identity from the time you were 10 or 11 years old was being a great athlete, and all of a sudden that was gone, it seemed to take away the meaning for your existence for a period of time. And so I figured over time that the spiritual dimension was important. And we tried to make that available to you. We didn't try to force it on anybody. We didn't try to preach at anybody. But we tried to have that in some ways permeate the program. And so occasionally I've heard from guys, and they've said, I didn't really understand what you were talking about at the time. But this happened, that happened, and now I understand. And some of you, probably it's never really meant anything to you. But when I run down the list of things that I think made a difference in the program here, I would have to say that to some degree, I think that the spiritual emphasis, particularly in the latter years, made a difference. And it may have had something to do. I don't think God cares which team wins, but I think that he does care how you operate. And if you do things in a certain way, in a certain spirit, and if you really care about each other, and you don't hate your opponent, you respect your opponent, and you play the game in the proper way, long-term, long haul, more good things will happen. And I think to some degree that happened. And so I think in terms of all honesty, I'd have to say that maybe that was part of it too. So anyway, that's enough for me, and thank you guys so much for all that you've done and all that you've meant to me and my family. I want to thank Nancy one more time. She's gotten some recognition tonight, and she's put up a lot, and so we appreciate it very much. Thank you, and thank you again, Trev.